So A Tale of Two Gnomes is a wonderful pattern in the kit. How I have designed the kit is we're using the Cape Facet Rainbow Stash, and I'm using a 10-inch square kit because this is fabulous. It works really well for a lot of her pieces. You have hats that are in different pieces. I'm going to show that to you in the pattern. It's a fabulous pattern. So the 10-inch square is lots of yardage. It's double what you actually need in the kit. So this is perfect for all you guys that have been collecting 10-inch squares and you didn't know what to do with them. This is it. We're going to go through these fabrics, and like I did in the Modern Trip Around the World, we're going to go through the fabrics piece by piece, and I'm going to tell you how I selected fabrics for my quilt. Okay, the binding is this beautiful new spot that came out this year. So this is a new colorway, and it's perfect for this quilt. So that is the spot that comes on it. The background fabric that you're getting is a beautiful magenta spot. So I'm going to show that to you later in this series. And then I've included in this kit something that doesn't come in the pattern requirements. One is a pink Aboriginal dot. This is retired. This is for your noses. So if you want your gnome to have a ball, you can go buy one of those fuzzy little balls at your local quilt shop. But the pattern does have a nose shape for you to cut out, and this is plenty. This is a little larger than what the pattern calls for you to do that with. Okay, so that comes in your kit. And then I included this beautiful Aboriginal dot that has been retired. This is great for the lips. So if you're going to do a Santa, then the mustache goes over the lips, and then the nose goes on top of that. So you need this for your Santas. So this is why I included this in my kit for you guys. Again, a retired piece. It's great. It's a Cape Aboriginal dot. And then you get this wonderful pattern. And I have to tell you, this is called Cotton Street Commons. So if you guys are wondering, if you don't buy the pattern from Petting Fabric, go to Cotton Street Commons and buy the pattern from her. This is probably one of the best patterns I've ever seen made. It's incredible. I'm not going to show you any of the proprietary stuff, but I'm going to show you how thick this pattern is. It's amazing. So it's a very thick pattern. You have a ton of templates and inserts. So this is just the pattern itself, and there's some templates in here, and there's probably 17 pages in that. So that's fabulous. And then I have a whole nother set of templates which you guys would have to buy the pattern to get. But you can see this here, and there's probably 10 more pages of templates in addition to the ones that are inside the pattern. That's huge. That is an incredible pattern. So this is well worth your $10. I'm sure it cost her more to print this pattern than what she's selling it for. And you can get this at Petting Fabric or at her site, and just support her. I would say, you know, designers deserve you guys to buy their patterns. It's worth the $10 to support her. I would love to do another one of her patterns in the future. Okay, I'm going to set that down. Okay, so what I did was I made Xerox copies of the pattern. She even gives you a guide when you're doing your patterns. She gives you a guide as to what the 1-inch square on the page should look like. So you're going to get your templates. You're going to cut your templates out, and you're going to use those templates through this process. Now, I'm going to tell you, we're going to go over fabrics in a minute, but I want to tell you what I did when I did the templates. I made multiple copies of the templates like I made multiple copies of the Christmas tree. You need to go watch part 1 of this series, which was the Christmas tree series, because I talked about making copies of those trees and little tricks to those. And then you'll also want to make copies of your Santa templates for this, for the gnome, for this project. I would take the template. So here's one of my tips, is I would cut my templates out, right? So I have maybe a Santa hat, and I would trace a couple copies of these. And then you can see them over here on my board. So I've got the same hat, and I would flip it left and right when I cut it. So it gave it a different perspective on the, patch or the panels. I didn't want all my hats going the same way, so I did a left perspective and a right. And so remember, I'm teaching applique. Her pattern has both applique and it has stitching and piecing, and it's a beautiful pattern and it's easy to stitch. So I would encourage you to do both. One of the things about her pattern is it's a sampler. There's a bunch of different techniques put together to make the different gnomes, and it's a great sampler of half square triangles and aligning and just, how to assemble different shapes and sizes together. So I really like that about her pattern, that it is a sampler quilt, especially for the beginner. But when you're doing your applique, we're using Hot Fix. Okay, this is Hot Fix. You guys have seen this product before. You've seen this on the wall, that I have this in a 10-yard and a fix. This is great. Hot Fix is how I use this to applique. And I'm going to show you tonight how easy and flexible this is once you attach it, because I got some questions on the wall about seam to seam, and other people that do applique, they don't like how rigid and how firm it is, and this Hot Fix doesn't do that. So we'll talk. Okay, so when you Hot Fix the back of your fabric, you're going to have this on the back of your fabric. It looks like freezer paper, but it's holding the glue to the fabric. You'll press both sides, and when you peel this off, it'll be extremely flexible. This is the side that we trace our pattern on, okay? So you will trace your patterns on here. You will then cut them out. You need to pay attention to what's on the other side. So I obviously utilized every square inch of that Hot Fix that I could, and I pressed multiple 10-inch squares on a piece. So just pay attention to that. If you have a Cutter Polar light box, this would be the time to use it, because that's fabulous with this. You turn on your light, you put this down, you can see where that starts and stops, and you'll put your pattern down and trace one with the print face down, and then you'll trace another one with it face up. And by doing that, you get a left and a right version of the hat that will go on your panels, and that way they won't all look the same. So this pattern comes with multiple hats that you can use. I did adjust the pattern a couple times. So we would print out the pattern, and then I would change up the top of the hat. So we'll show that to you, because some of my Santas, like this one you see up here in the top, I did a ski bunny hat with a big flower on the top and just cut it to a point. So that was a really cute version of one of these hats. Anything goes in a gnome quilt. That's what's fun about this. Anything goes. So you can, so long as your panels in your quadrants all match up to the pattern total, you're good to go. You can play with this as much as you want, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I did that. So this is my border, and that's my inside sashing. I saw it done with a flower at market. Is a very bold. I have toned that down to a medium scale for you guys for the sashing that comes in your kit. There's two options. Most of you guys already have your kit. There's some orders that just came in like today and yesterday. And so you have to tell us if you want the magenta, which is beautiful, or the sherbet, which is coming tomorrow morning, and it's retired and out of print permanently, which is beautiful reverse of this. It's the opposite of this. But this is a great, great color to go with this 10-inch square pack that I'm sending you. So we're going to go through those fabrics in just a second. Let's recap for a second on our Christmas trees. There were some of these Christmas trees here. You can see them on the board over here to the left. I'll turn this board for you. So there were several of these patterns right here. Okay? Hopefully you guys can see these. They're all scattered here on this board. And I really took the time to organize while I was cutting. So it's really, really essential that when you take a pattern, you slow down, take your time, and you're organized. You take one of your pressed fabrics and you put your pattern on there and you trace it. So in this example, I would need something large because I want to fit my whole hat on here. I would trace my whole hat on here, and I was very frugal with the space, so I would do several of these and fit them in here as much as I could, and then take your templates and go pin them back on your board in an area to let you know where the template is. You don't want to lose these templates. You don't want these templates to get lost or thrown away, because then you have a lot of cutting to do to make another template. So I would take this template after I traced several of them, and I'd go pin it on my board. All right? And I would pin it, and then as I would cut out my hats, I would put the hats by the template so that I could see how many of the same hats I had made and whether I did a left or a right. So that takes just a little bit of time to trace your hats, stop, cut them out, and pin them back with your template. There's a very organized Judy Niemeyer way, in a Georgie girl kind of way, which is a little more simple, but you're organizing everything by your templates, and you're putting them where you can see them before you go to your next set of hats. So in this example, you can see that I did this same hat 4 extra times. So I have 4 here, and then I also have 1 there. So I have 5 of the same hat tops. But that's okay because I'm making 2 quilts. One is a gift to my son and his fiance, and 1 for me. So I'm okay with having 5 hats that are the same. You are going to plan out the size of your quilts, and you're going to adjust your sashing in this pattern to the size of the quilt that you want, and you're going to adjust your panels wider by the size of the quilt you want. Everything else I would keep the same in the way that she assembled it, because it's really an organized way that she wrote this pattern. So that's my tip about cutting out trees and cutting out hats, is every time you stop and you put your template back in the same spot, whether it's a box or on the wall with the pieces that you cut out so you can visually see what you have before you progress to the next piece. You need to cut out, if you're doing an applique version, you need to cut out the bodies, the beards, and the hats. Okay. Your trees, so I'm going to hold up my cutter ruler. Hopefully you can see this. The trees should already be done. There's some fun tree patterns here that we have that I put on the wall before. When I did the trees, okay, as I would cut out my trees, I would keep the tree piece next to the paper piece, so I knew what my tree would look like. For the top of my trees, I did flowers or a heart. My mom actually made this heart, so I'm using a piece that she made on my quilt, so it's sentimental. All right, now, this tree has hot fix on it, and look how flexible it is. See how flexible that is? That's not stiff at all. So if you've been afraid of applique with Laura Heine because it's stiff, hot fix will fix that problem. It will not be stiff. Okay. So there are my trees examples. Now, when you're using, one more tip, when you're using these 10-inch squares, you'll probably have to re-watch this video a couple times because I'm throwing a lot of thoughts into this tonight. When you do the 10-inch square, you're going, if you decide to applique, you don't have to applique. But if you decide to applique, you're going to take your 10-inch, your hot fix, which is wider than 10-inch. You're going to put your 10-inch, let me get one for you, in the wrong side, so I'll do this one, it's nice and bright. The wrong side of this needs the glue. This is the side, the shiny part is where the glue is. You're going to lay these out, okay? So you're going to lay them out, and I did them where they were face down. When you read the words, it's confusing. The words say this side down, but if you read the words, that's the side you should see. So I put all my 10-inch squares, I put 3 of them down, and then I cut a piece of hot fix that was that length. And I'm still going to have like 1.5 inches left that I don't want to waste. So what I did was I went and I got this great strip, a jelly roll strip. So I went, you can see the bottom of this I've already cut apart. So I went and got one of my favorite jelly roll strips, which is on the top. And this is my cut out 10-inch squares down here. And I used this jelly roll strip to savor the last part of that hot fix. From there, I turned around and I used really skinny Christmas tree patterns right here. This tree is this funky tree right here. And look what I did with it. I put it right here next to the Santa. Isn't that cute? Isn't that adorable? Well, then, I also had the new cactus flower, and when I took that apart, which you'll see over here, you guys have seen me use that, the cactus already on hot fix. I had this little scrap left. Guess what I'm going to do with this little scrap? I'm going to put this in the bottom of my tree. How cute is that? So you can keep your scraps with the hot fix on them, cut out the shape or make a shape, and use them to make other things out of them. But don't let it go to waste, because this was perfect with that fabric that I used in a jelly roll strip. That is 2.5 inches or less, so a jelly roll strip works great with this Christmas tree. Okay, you'll have to go watch part 1 to see where to get these patterns. All right, so we talked about how to use your hot fix. We've talked about utilization of the hot fix. We've talked about how to make the hats multiple ways. Let's talk about changing a gnome to a Santa and how I did that. So this is a special project. All the kids are making this project with me because it's going, well, all but one, because all the siblings are cutting out Santas. That's their job. Husband is pressing, and then I'm coming back and I am top stitching over this hot fix. So I'm going to do some zigzags on some edges and then just a straight 1/8 inch stitch. I know my quilter Laura, who's Wicked Awesome Quilting on Facebook, we've already talked about what she's going to do to the beards and to the hats. So I'm not too worried about my hot fix coming up. But with hot fix, you must press it on both sides, on the right side and the wrong side, to really get that glue hot and get it to stick, and then it will stay. Okay, so talking about gnomes, let's talk about gnomes first and how I changed up some of the gnomes in the pattern, and then if you're doing the applique version, how to press it or assemble it, and then let's talk about the Santa version of the gnomes. So one of the things that we did, your gnomes are here, okay, and in the applique, you want to take the body of your gnome first, and you want to press that down. And then on top of that, you want to find your gnome, main part of the face, and then you'll want to put the hat on top of that. Okay? So when you do this, remember, in a gnome, you don't really have a face. You just have a nose. So that is how you assemble this in this order. You press this on first, then the middle piece on top, and then the body. Now, I only press this on top if I cut a cute little swirl or a zigzag on the bottom. Let me show that to you. So this one here has the white on top of the purple in a zigzag. This one here, the fabric was zigzag. So I just merely traced out the zigzag after the applique was on it. I traced that out. And then guess what I did? I used that as a pattern for the other one. So then from here, I would cut it out to make a zigzag on all of the ones that don't have zigzags. It's easy to follow the zigzag pattern on Cave's fabric, but then just take that plastic, like freezer paper part off, and you'll use it on your other pieces to make a cute shirt. Okay, pay attention to the white that you use. So we talked about the assembly of this and what order to press it. If it's a shirt with a zigzag, put it over the body. If it's not, put the shirt over the middle of the body. Cover it up, because this covers up the white. This white is on top of this fungi pattern. You can faintly see the pattern through the white. White is not as thick. But I plan to come back and do a cute stitch on that. So if you don't want to stitch that, you'll want to tuck it underneath and make sure that you line it up and press this one first and cover it, depending on what you want to do, okay? That's why you can have fun with this, because no rules apply in a gnome quilt. Gnome quilt is just free for all. Okay. Now, let's talk about the body, not the shirt, but, you know, the face part of the gnome or the middle part of your gnome. I started with the gnomes, making the gnome pieces, and in this case it has a zigzag, so I would put that over the body, right? But then I realized I lined everything up, and just like the pattern has, and then I realized with the gnome, it would be super easy to swap out a couple of them to a Santa. And so here's the Santa beard. So when I did the Santa, the first thing I did was I did this Santa here, and I took a close-up of that and put that on the wall. So when I put the body on this Santa right here, it was all square, and the beard was over that square. Let me find you a square. I just had a square. Okay, we're not going to find my square very quickly, I'll tell you that. So, what did I do in my square? Oh. So when I put, this is a dramatic version of what I'm talking about, because the squares are bigger than this. But in this example, the body is here, you put your beard over it, and it really looks awkward, because the square is not lining up with the beard, and gnomes line up. So what I did was I cut a little bit off of the corners to make it look like it was shoulders and arms inverted, which you'll see here. And it has a super cute effect with that beard. So check that out on the wall if you want an idea. I also layered that beard. So that one I freehanded. I cut a big one, and then I narrowed it in, and I just did several layers of this Arctic white along with the mist. So it's white and cream and white. And my quilter is going to quilt them differently so it looks like a real beard. You can use Sherpa, which I don't have any Sherpa yet. It's on its way. Yay. But PJ and I were talking today, and she came up with the idea of Sherpa beards. That would be a cute spin-off of this. Or you could put double fusible batting behind the beard and attach the beard with some fluff. So that would be another third thing that you could do with the beards. So understand that I gave you a pattern that you can use for this beard. It's off of a free website for kids. However, on that page, most of the free websites on the World Wide Web have these funky little buttons that say download. Don't click download because you're going to download some other program. Just print the page. If you just go and see the beard and you hit file print, you can print this beard. And it's an adorable beard. So when you print this beard, make a couple copies of it. Go ahead and put your hot fix on the back of the fabric, trace it, and cut them out. You're going to layer this. So you're going to have your body first, then you're going to have your beard, then you're going to put your hat on top of this beard, like this, okay? And then you're going to come back and add the mustache. The mustache, the way I'm doing it, goes on top of the hat. I'm going to put the nose on top of the beard, and I'm going to put the lips underneath the beard, mustache in between the mustache and the beard. So that's how the Santa goes. You're going to have a nose and lips for your Santa, okay? Let's see if I can hold that up for you. So it looks like that. Pretty cool. That's a very cute version. If you're going to do the Santas, you cannot split your fat quarters like we talked about last week for the trees. You need to have some of your fat quarters a little wider to be proportional with your Santas. So in this example, the first thing I did was I moved my tree over, put my Santa on, and I'm like, gosh, that's a cute panel. So I left it. I liked it like that. But, and this is in this example with the Santa, which I'm layering, I'm going to put the nose on there, I'm going to put the lips on there, I made the beard more narrow because the panel's more narrow because that's a half panel of the fat quarter, half of the fat quarter. In this example, I made the Santa wider on the panel. So long, and if you look at her gnome pattern, you will see the widths of her panels vary. So long as your quadrant, so this is a quadrant, so long as your quadrant all comes out the same, you're okay. If you are OCD and you need everything to line up in columns, well, like the pattern does, and you have 4 columns on your quilt, then pay attention to the widths of your panels and make them like she has them in the pattern, where they stagger, but the whole width of that section equals out to be the same. You always want to have sashing around your panels. So just sketch it. It's super easy. We have a free sketchable grid on cutting fabric. Go down to member content and look for one of the downloadables, and it's a grid that you can print and you can sketch it out. Okay, so you don't have to buy anything fancy. You just print a piece of paper and sketch it. And if you're an Excel person like I am, you can Excel your panels and your shapes, and it'll work out beautiful for you. So we've talked about the beards, we've talked about the panels, we've talked about the sections, and we've talked about the trees. Let's talk about fabric now, because I know we have a couple more minutes. I want to utilize this time to go through the fabric like I did before with the Modern Trip Around the World. I want to show you some tricks that I'm doing on my quilts, and you're welcome to do them on your quilts as well. So let me organize. I'm going to take all my beards and my bodies, and I'm going to put them back in the right spot. Take my hats. I'm going to move those. Okay. All right, that's done. So I've reorganized my table. So now let's go through fabric super quick. Set my trees aside. And let's talk about what comes in this kit. In this 10-inch square, you've got a lot of fabulous fabrics, and I did not use the sunburst fabric, so I set that aside. okay? But I divided the fabrics up before I started by color scale, color impression, and then also I divided them by flowers versus prints. So what do I mean by that? This is a print to me, okay? So this is a body. It's like a shirt here, okay? So that's one. That's a print. The fungi is a print, okay? So that's a print. I treated this as a print. I did not treat, this is not a flower. So this would be the bottom of one of those. This is a flower, so for me it goes on a hat. All my hats were flowers. I loved the look of the hats being flowers. The stripes that you see on the quilt from Market that I took and I posted, those are Kaif's new stripes coming out next year in March. So those shot cottons are not here yet. That's why we are using some of his fabulous current 10-inch squares in the rainbow collection. So this is a flower. This would be a great hat with this to be a body. If you do this, you need to pay attention to your negative space behind your Santa. Negative space being the panel, which is a Tim Holtz panel. Okay. Beautiful flower. This is a hat. Now, I loved this print. I also loved this print right here. So I loved it so much, I made this a hat and a body, which I think looks fabulous. It looks like he's in a suit. So that's a flower, okay? So that's a hat. 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 This is the paisley, and it's stunning. So I took this, and I used this with your blocks. So once you get them divided up, you can put all of your hats across the top of your table, so clean off your space. I had a completely clean board. I was surprised with myself. Completely clean board. I had my paisleys on top, and then I matched up the bottoms, and I stepped away to make sure the scale was right. And sometimes it wasn't. So, like, this one is a hard one to match. If it's a hard one to match with another piece in it, make it out of the shirt and the body, and then you're totally match. Okay? This could be a print. So this could be the bottom to that beautiful top that you have. Here. I put this in the wrong place. So there's my flower, and there's the bottom. And pay attention to the direction of the print. Think about which way you want the print to go on the shirt. Okay? A couple more. Hats. This was a hat. Even though it's, when you're cutting your hats, I should talk about this. When you're cutting your hats and you have small scale flowers, they're going to look great. When you have large scale flowers like this, you might have to cut out another piece and put it on top, and I did that. I did that twice. So here in this hat, this was a large scale flower. I cut out a flower on the top, and I appliqued and pressed the other flower on top of that hat. It gave it dimension, and the flower sticking off of the hat, so you can really get that 3D effect. Super cool. Ironically, when I did this Santa here, I could not fit the hat and the body out of one 10-inch square. I was like a little bit off. I used it, cut a flower, and appliqued it over the body right here, and you can't tell. It's cute as a button, but I wanted to salvage all of that 10-inch square. Even though I have two, I still want to salvage one and use as much as I can. So when you have big scale flowers, think about how you can use those and where they're going to show up in the hat. Okay? Okay, body. And this is another, this one I did not use in a hat. It's very large scale. You're not going to see that much of it on a hat. I'm going to save it for something else. Same thing with this one. Large scale for that hat. But this is perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So, didn't use that one. And I did use this one. I did. So you guys are getting the gist of this. Now I'm getting into repeats. You have pretty much in a 10-inch pack, you should have similar fabrics, almost identical. It depends where in the repeat of the pattern they cut it for you. But you should have all matching pieces to your hats. So it should work out really well. So there's only 3 or 4 of these that don't work because the print's so large, but because the print's so large, it's a beautiful panel that you'll be able to use somewhere else. So this works incredibly well. Let's talk about Tim Holtz fabrics and backgrounds real quick. So this is the fat quarter set, and most of these negative spaces work really well. I laid a bunch of boxes out, shipping boxes actually, and then I laid all of these on top of that, and then I laid out my hats. I cut them out, and I played with the hats and how they played off of these fat quarters. The fat quarter that I'm not using for this project is this one. It's a beautiful print, but a little too aggressive for my quilt. Maybe I'll use that on the back because it is pretty cool and eccentric. And this is a really cool, like, eclectic type of quilt. So I liked that a lot. I did see a really cute pattern that I put on the Facebook wall of a backing that had been pieced. And so because of that, I'm going to keep my strips like this. And if you go to the wall, you'll see it's on the Case Facet Quilt Support Group wall. It was sewn together like this, and 2 panels were then sewn into it. And they used all the scraps from the front in like a strip scrappy look. It was adorable. I'm most probably going to do that on the back of this quilt. The other piece that I am not using is this world globe panel. For me, that's a little strong on my background of my panel, so I'm not using that one. The rest of these are stellar. Like that, you can't get more Christmassy than that. So I loved it. Felt it was perfect. This one's one of my favorite right here. Don't be afraid of these, little shapes. You can see in the panel behind me that you can barely see it. And that color looks really, really well. Okay, so I think that answers most of the questions for tonight.